Friday, January 26, 1945. Best day, as far as physical condition is concerned, in a long time. Went to bed with the symptoms of chill, took aspen whiskey and slept until 6:45. Toilet, tidied room. At 7:30, coffee, 1 egg, toast, and orange juice. First time I'd had orange juice since before Raymond's case of oranges came from Chinsegut. I had to throw the last of them away a week or so. I listened to the news radio, and if it's true, it reflects great gains in the war efforts. Welcome to the Elizabeth Robbins Diary podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kaler. Today's episode is all about citrus and will help us understand why Brooksville, Florida had a tangerine drop on New Year's Eve. When Elizabeth bought Chinsegut Hill in 1905, the property was full of citrus trees thanks to the previous owners, J.R. and Charlotte Snow. The first commercial planter is believed to be Frederick Likes, who established his orchard in 1851. But in the decades following the Civil War, many farmers, including the Snows, had added citrus to their crops. By the late 1800s, citrus trees covered both county and city property. Even the land that now houses our historic courthouse was nothing but citrus trees back then. By the 1890s, citrus was Brooksville's biggest crop, with over 300,000 trees on commercial farms. 400 of those trees belonged to Elizabeth's 15-year-old brother, Raymond. The following is an excerpt of a letter from the teenage Raymond to Elizabeth. Bodine Grove, September 23, 1888. Dearest Sister, I received your letter of the 1st a few days ago and was very glad to hear from you. I received the presents you sent me and like them very much. I have enjoyed perfect health this summer and am growing rapidly. I am turning my whole attention to orange culture and find it very interesting and expect in the course of 15 years to be independent. I suppose you know that Uncle Maury gave me 5 acres of land and that I have had 2 acres cleared which I expect to set out in the spring. I have about 400 trees that I have raised myself, about 180 of which I budded this summer and are doing well. I have learned how to bud successfully. Until I received your letter of September 1st, I had not heard from you since you left America. I had a nice letter from Father and Cousin Lizzie a few days ago. I will now close with love to all, your devoted brother, Raymond. Brooksville's unique topography and unusual soil meant better conditions for the fruit, and by the early 1900s, Brooksville fruit was in demand around the country and earned the highest prices in the industry. We don't know for sure who first coined the nickname Home of the Tangerine, but Alfred McKeithen believed his uncle Daniel Hale was a likely candidate. In 1910, McKeithen said Daniel received such an astonishingly large check for his tangerine crop that he made copies of the check and published it all over the country. While the market price was $4, Brooksville tangerines were fetching $12. In his paper Rebuilt and Remade, James Paget wrote, between 1909 and into the late 1930s, citrus farming in Florida transformed from a potentially profitable endeavor for investors, entrepreneurs, and small farm families into a multi-million-dollar, large-scale agricultural industry. Everyone in Brooksville embraced their tangerine identity. Hernando High mascot was the tangerine, and class rings featured the fruit. City Hall stationery used a tangerine logo, and so did the Brooksville Police Department badges. National attention came to Brooksville in 1926 when grower H.B. Schultz sent a box of tangerines to President Calvin Coolidge. They were likely delivered by Raymond Robbins, who served as a presidential advisor and was a personal friend of the Coolidges. Schultz received a personal thank you note from the president, causing quite a stir locally. As someone who grew up in Pennsylvania, citrus always felt exotic and mysterious. My mom recently told me that one of her strongest memories as a child in 1950s Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, revolved around tangerines. Let me just read her text because she put it so perfectly. The tangerine I received for Christmas was probably the only one I had during the year. There may have been the occasional orange, but if so, they left no memory because they probably weren't as rare. My friend Deborah Johnson had the very same experience. Different cultures, but identical memories of fragrance, taste, and the fun and playful delights and ease of opening the fruit and separating its parts. When I called to ask her for 3 simple words or phrases that describe a tangerine from her experience as a child, one of the 3 was Christmas morning. The other two, the same as mine, were about its scent and its sweetness. I think if I had asked her for 4, we probably both would have said that we enjoyed being able to peel it all by ourselves. The Brooksville Tangerine story definitely resonates among baby boomers like me who lived outside of Florida during childhood. Even if their families could afford them, the fragility of the fruit limited them to a very short season, so the smell, taste, touch, and sight senses have a long-term memory that is resilient and pleasurable. Brooksville may not have snow, but its tangerines made a lot of kids happy on Christmas morning. And now I really wish I knew if that Christmas tangerine came to Mom from Brooksville. To understand more about why citrus mattered so much to our community, we're going to talk with Jim Kimbrough. He has deep roots in both Brooksville and the citrus industry, so he'll be able to give us the inside scoop. So I am here with Jim Kimbrough. Jim, can you explain your family connection to Brooksville for us?
Well, thank you. First of all, God is good, and I'm blessed to have the privilege of serving in many capacities here in Brooksville, Hernando County, and the state of Florida. I am, I guess you might say, woven into the fabric of Hernando County. My my great-grandfather was J.W. Kimbrough, who served as a county commissioner. My father and grandfather, James Pierce and Pierce Kimbrough, both served as Hernando County School Board members. That's on my dad's side.
Yeah.
On my mother's side, her father, Roy Heiss, was an officer vice president of Hernando State Bank and later served as a clerk for the city of Brooksville. In addition, my grandfather on my mother's side was Mallory H. Snow. Bruce and I are cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, yes, very much woven into the fabric of Brooksville and Hernando County. 5th generation, in fact, and it's all been wonderful. Had the pleasure of serving as under 5 governors here in Hernando County, retiring after 50 years as a director and officer of SunTrust Banks. Governor Askew, I served as chairman of the founding board of Pasco Hernando State College, and then Governor Graham, Southwest Florida Water Management District Governing Board, and then Governor Childs and Governor McKay served 8 years on the Florida Transportation Commission, and Governor Scott as a member of the TBARTA, Tampa Bay Area Transportation Authority. So I've been blessed, as well as serving as vice chairman of the Florida Chamber in the early 90s and leading it to become the largest chamber in America.
We are definitely very blessed to have you and the long family connection, and blessed to have all of this whole family. And this will be the second time that we've talked about Mallory this season, so that's pretty neat.
Cool.
And I know that your grandson's name is Pierce, and now I'm putting together that that's a family name.
For sure.
So talk to me a little bit about your connection to the citrus industry.
Well, I'm a 4th generation Hernando County citrus grower, born and raised on a citrus and cattle ranch out in Spring Lake at God's Country, which is the name of our home place there on Old Trilby Road. So I graduated at the University of Florida with a degree in agriculture and a major in citrus. Post-college, I worked with Ben Hill Griffin, Frostproof, and Evans Properties in Dade City, developing and managing thousands of acres of citrus across Florida. So when I moved back home, I became a director of Brooksville Citrus Growers Association, which had several thousand acres in Hernando and adjacent counties that it managed.
Okay, so I'm looking at the front page of a January 1932 edition of the Brooksville Journal, which was one of 2 papers that we had at the time. And just on that front page, 3 of the articles are about citrus. So I think it shows how important the industry was to Brooksville. But can you talk a little bit about why Brooksville mattered to citrus and why citrus mattered to Brooksville?
Well, citrus was a major crop in Florida, major industry in Florida, and certainly it was in Hernando County. The Brooksville Citrus Growers Association was founded in the probably the 30s, I'm guessing, maybe a little later. But it was responsible for producing, harvesting, and marketing the citrus grown on the groves of its members in the association. And it employed a lot of people in the county.
Sure.
From the production, harvesting, processing, and shipping.
So we have a letter from Raymond Robbins in March of 1931 that says that he's going on a campaign in Florida to encourage our farmers to join the Florida Citrus Exchange. Did that ever take root in Hernando County?
Absolutely. The records will probably reflect that Brooksville Citrus Growers Association may have been one of the founding members of the Florida Citrus Exchange. Whether it was or not,
okay,
the Florida Exchange marketed fresh fruit packed at Brooksville Citrus Growers Association for decades. So yes, we were a very important part of the Florida Citrus Exchange.
So what was the benefit of a grower joining an exchange like the Brooksville Citrus Growers as opposed to just selling the stuff themselves?
It gave us option of marketing to a much greater audience and connectivity with other growers across Florida to market our products in a greater circle of potential buyers across the country. Marketing horsepower is what Florida Citrus Exchange gave Florida citrus growers.
So I found a reference, the earliest one that I found to Brooksville being called the home of the Tangerine was made by Daniel Hale, who would be a family member of yours.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about why that phrase would have been coined, whether it was by Daniel or somebody else? Why specifically would we have been connected with the tangerine?
There were many of the acres of citrus in Hernando County were tangerine groves. And the soil here produced quality fruit. And it was good reason for us to become the home of the tangerine. And the cooler weather prompted the ripening of the fruit at a good time for marketing. And yes, we had some beautiful tangerine groves in Hernando County.
So we've talked about your connection to citrus, but you also mentioned the banking. And I think it's a really interesting connection that the two of those are intersecting. And they do that for several generations in your family. Why is it important that the two of those work together?
In Florida, there were at one time well over 800 community banks. And with citrus being the primary industry in Florida, many of the shareholders of banks and or founders of banks were also citrus growers. That's just the fact of life. Mm-hmm. As Florida evolved, the banking industry consolidated into just a few banks, but that was the connection. And most anybody who had a citrus grove owned a share of stock in a bank somewhere.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And then we're going to add a third component to that, and that is transportation. So I know that going way back several generations, Mr. Hale had been involved in helping getting Route 19 started, and he also helped bring the railroad in, which, you needed the railroad to be able to get your food out.
Right.
But then going down a generation, we ended up with Alfred McKeithen, who was on the State Roads Board and made sure that all roads lead to Brooksville. That's his little slogan. And then you are also going to join in on that with the roads and transportation. What is your connection there? And why was that so important to have all of those pieces put together?
Well, roads lead to economic prosperity opportunities. And so Alfred believed, and so do I, that you build a road and they will come and everybody will prosper because of it. As I mentioned, Governor Childs and Governor McKay appointed me to the Florida Transportation Commission, where I served for 8 years promoting roads all over Florida. But my specialty one to promote was the Suncoast Parkway. And I'm delighted to say that I was successful with my fellow Transportation Commission members in getting that built and accomplished. And now it extends, in fact, almost all the way to Levy County.
And people don't think about roads. I mean, people in your family think about roads. But if you think, if nothing else, the gift of your family in bringing those interstate roads here, getting the railroad connected, getting the Suncoast Parkway, which has been absolutely transformational in our generation, that alone is such a legacy that your family has left us in that attention to something that it's easy to just, our tendency is just to complain about roads, not to think about how to build them.
Right. Thank you very much, and I agree with that. We appreciate that acknowledgement, but we believe in them and have promoted them.
Yeah. Well, and also, again, connecting that to the bank and what you said, that's so interesting that there generally was people that were growing citrus also had banks. Your family, started that Hernando State Bank in, is it 1905?
Yeah.
And William, was involved. William McKeithen was involved right at the beginning, and then went on to Alfred.
He was the founder.
And then it goes on to Alfred, who becomes president, and then you. So it really was a family affair for, gosh, how long would you say? When did you retire?
1909. I just retired a couple of years ago after serving 50 years, so well over 100 years.
The same family. That's an extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Yeah. So we went beyond just growing the citrus, which is where it was in the 1800s, into packing and processing the citrus as well. What can you tell us about that and the kind of jobs that it provided people?
Well, juicing Florida oranges, squeezing those oranges and making orange juice out of them was transformational in the growth of the industry, because of the 100% of the citrus produced in Florida, about only 15% of it was packed and shipped fresh as the years moved along. 85% of it was made into orange juice. And the large citrus concentrate plants across Florida were built as a testimonial to the need to process Florida citrus into juice. Pasco, the world's largest processing facility, was in Dade City at Pasco Packing Company, later becoming Likes Pasco Packing Company.
And is that the same Likes that were here in Hernando? I mean, the same?
Absolutely same family, yes, correct.
Okay. Interesting. And then was the concentrate of the juicing done at the same time that juicing started, or was that a later thing?
No, concentrate came along at a later time.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the pests and weather problems that impact the industry, because they definitely can just decimate things. How did farmers try to stay ahead of that to make sure that they could actually make a living with citrus?
Well, the good Lord and the weatherman's in charge of everything as far as farmers are concerned. And the freezes in the late 70s and early 80s decimated the industry in the northern portion of the district in Florida, and certainly that included Hernando County. Many growers replanted, only to have freezes 5 or 10 years later damage those new grows. And then later came degreening, which is a pest that infects the leaves, and it caused the death of many orange groves. And in fact, we used to have over 800,000 acres of citrus in Florida. Today, that's down to less than 100,000 acres. Just a few years ago, we produced 250 million boxes of oranges in Florida. The forecast for this year is 18 million.
Wow.
So you see the drastic difference that has occurred as a result of the weather and insects.
Yeah, and I was reading something, I was doing research on Lena Hawkins when she was the mayor of Brooksville in 1928, and she was making a speech about all the problems that were besieging the community as the Great Depression was kicking in, but one of them was a Mediterranean fruit fly epidemic that had killed the citrus just at the same time that everybody was seeing the stock market crash and all these other problems, and it was a really, really rough time.
It
here
was
for
bad.
a while. Yeah.
I wasn't, but I know it was bad.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't around either.
Yeah.
So you touched on the 80s and the things that were occurring then that shut down a lot of the places. Is that what you would credit with separating us from the citrus industry here in Hernando?
Yeah. Definitely the weather killed a lot of the orange groves, and the citrus greening came along after that. And then, fortunately, residential development kicked in the late 60s, early 70s, the birth of Spring Hill and the other residential developments around the county and the area helped pick up the slack that was created by the disastrous freezes and greening.
So would you consider residential growth then to be what replaced citrus as an economic driver here?
As the major economic driver, absolutely. Construction and building of homes, commercial developments, hospitals, medical facilities, professional buildings. Yes, all of that picked up the slack that was created by the damages to the citrus industry.
Which then brings us back to the roads again, because the residential couldn't necessarily have picked up if we didn't have the infrastructure to get people quickly to Tampa and to some of these other areas.
And Alfred's foresight in 1949-50 resulted in the acquisition of a 200 to 400 foot road right-of-way from Weeki Wachee to Titusville across the state of Florida in 1950. He had the foresight to have the state buy that right-of-way, and today you see it being 4-lane, 6-lane, or wider from Weeki Wachee to Cape Canaveral.
Wow. That is really interesting. I did not know that at all. No, he was a master at figuring out that road stuff for sure. Got it from his Grandpa Hale, I guess. I wanted to, because you reminded me when you talked about your connection to Swift Mud, and obviously that was something that Alfred also got going, was the water management districts. Yeah. And can you just talk about his philosophy of why he created them where he did and what the background was with that?
Well, the catalyst for Swift Mud were a big flood that we had in the 60s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Massarocktown was a chicken capital of the world, so to speak. And literally hundreds of thousands of chickens were killed with the flooding that occurred there. And he saw the need to put some water control structures in place. And so he ended up legislatively being successful in getting Swift Mud funded to cover the district from Levy County down to Venice area and then inland to Polk County. And it became a regulatory commission to help govern the use of water, preservation of water for Floridians, not only in this area, but as a result of Swift Mud, there were 4 other water management districts created in Florida. So if there are 5 water management districts in Florida, Swift Mud being one of them.
Well, and that's actually how we met. I don't know if you remember, but at the time, I had just come on city council, and Swift Mud was looking to relocate to Tampa officially. And Alfred had been very intentional in putting the heads of putting the heads of the water management districts into rural communities to help the economy. Right. And so you and I partnered together on making sure that didn't happen, which was a really fun way to find out how government works for a newly elected official.
Yeah. Yeah, we were fortunately very successful with the help of Senator Wilton Simpson politically to retain the headquarters of Swift Mud in Brooksville.
Yeah, and it's so important because areas like Brooksville are the ones that have the water that areas like Tampa don't have enough of and use. And it's important that we have a voice at the table and that small communities have that voice.
Amen.
So thankfully, Alfred understood that. And thankfully, we still understood that a couple years back whenever we fought that fight.
Yes, indeed. And you were very helpful, I might add.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that you share with the listeners about the citrus industry or anything else that we've talked about today?
Florida is a great place to live. In fact, Hernando County area is the greater place to live. This whole central north sun coast is hard to beat. And I'm delighted that we're a generational part of it.
That is perfect. And it's such an honor to know you and to talk to you today. And I'm so grateful that we're going to be able to share this information with a wider audience because the more we get the word out, the more people understand how special this community is and why they should come and check it out. Tangerines became a less popular crop after a series of freezes and pest infestations in the 1930s and 1950s. And as juice became more popular, tangerines were in less demand. Farmers turned to other fruits like oranges that could be juiced and required less labor to harvest. The tangerine made a comeback in Brooksville in 2001 when Wayne Vutek created the Tangerine Time New Year's Eve celebration. A 6-foot, 200-pound glowing tangerine marked the countdown to midnight as hundreds gathered for a casual community gathering. To bring in the new year, attendees toasted with a glass of orange juice and threw 500 foam tangerines into the air. Thanks to citrus, the fortunes of many Brooksvillians and Floridians were made and sometimes lost. A devastating statewide freeze in the winter of 1894 wiped out hundreds of thousands of trees, including those lovingly grown by our teenage Raymond. But that is a story for another podcast. On the next episode of the Elizabeth Robbins Diary podcast, we will talk about a bizarre popular medical treatment that Elizabeth took to cure her of the effects of typhoid. Thank you for listening to the Elizabeth Robbins Diary podcast, a creation and production of Brooksville Main Street, a nonprofit focused on economic redevelopment through historic preservation and placemaking. The podcast is made possible with the help of a generous grant from Florida Humanities and the brilliant minds of our guest experts like Mr. Kimbrough. Would you please consider following and rating the podcast? By following us, you'll be sure not to miss an episode. Leif Thomason of Odd Life Studios produced this content as well as editing, mixing, and mastering it. Tom and Patria Dye opened Profound Revelation Studios in downtown Brooksville, allowing us to create this content right in the heart of our city. The docents of Chinsegut Hill Historic Site and Andrea Reed generously provided research, support, and advice. Fales Library of New York University for access to Elizabeth's collection, and the Brooksville Train Depot Museum for allowing me to dig into their archives on the history of citrus in our county. Rocco Maglio of the Hernando Sun for his research on local citrus production, published in an article entitled Home of the Tangerine. City Clerk Jennifer Batista for recreating the old City of Brooksville letterhead so we could use it to make new fancy shirts. Barry Meindl of DeBar Design created our lovely graphics. Elisa Babor of Roots Creative Co. designed an amazing website and social media. She also designed our tourbeville.com website, which gives you our city's history with photos and stories and uses a tangerine logo, which Barry also created. Randy Olson of Live Oak Theater wrote and performed our theme song, Time is Whispering. And of course, thanks to Elizabeth Robbins, who cherished her Brooksville land and cultivated it so carefully. Though the large orchards are gone, when wandering through the Chinsegut woods, I inevitably stumble across the tangerine, sour orange, and lemon trees still scattered in between the pine, and I'm so grateful for this chance to executive produce, write, and host this telling of her story.